Hey, good morning. Welcome to another episode of the Quarantine Leadership Series. I'm here with a new friend from Charlotte, North Carolina, Munro Richardson, who's the executive director of really a highly acclaimed program and initiative called Read Charlotte. Munro, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Cam. Glad to be here.
So you're a graduate of Kansas. We talked a little bit before I hit record. Do you still say Rock Chalk Jayhawk, or do we have you saying Go Heels yet?
No, Rock Chalk Jayhawk till I die.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. When you look at, before we start talking about Read Charlotte, one of the things that I think our Y community, the people that watch this are interested in, you have got such a great influential group of board, really just dynamic leaders and funders in your group. What advice would you give on recruiting such a strong and influential group?
You know, I think we're very fortunate to have the supporters we have for Read Charlotte, and we think all the time about how do we maintain their engagement and how do we keep them at the table. One of the things that I think is important is to have a clear value proposition of what it is that we're offering to the community. We're in a different situation, unlike the Y. We don't provide direct service, so my bar is even higher as an intermediary to really demonstrate and articulate a value proposition and then defend it. And I think about all of our board members in terms of not just being supporters of Read Charlotte's work, but how are we also supporting their work? They're often funding other initiatives or supporting other initiatives in our community. And my goal is for the things that we do and that we offer to our funders and board members are assisting them in the rest of their work as well. So how do we help them be smarter, to be more equipped in their grant making or leadership on other boards or other initiatives they're involved with through their engagement with Read Charlotte? And then how do we also leverage their expertise and insights and experience to help drive our work forward? So I think of it as an ongoing dialogue and an ongoing exchange of value. But I think a lot about what's the value that we're creating, what do we defend, and then how do we help our partners, including our board members and supporters, be able to mint some of that currency and use it in their work as well.
Wow. All right, we can quit. That's a great answer. That's worth it right there. That's great stuff. Great stuff. But you did reference engagement. Are you engaged? I mean, these are really top level in Charlotte, Mecklenburg area people. Are you able to engage them fully, and how are you doing that? What advice would you give about engaging that level of volunteer?
Yeah, I think, again, I go back to this idea of an ongoing dialogue. So my board is sort of like the size of a fundraising board, although it acts like a policy board. So we have about 21 people. I'd say at any one point in time, I'm engaged in dialogue with at least a third. Text messages, emails. I've already texted with one of my board members 3 times this morning, and it's not even 10 o'clock yet. So there is this ongoing relationship in terms of what are we seeing and what's happening, and what are they seeing and what's happening, and how we can mutually work together to achieve both our respective but also our mutual community focused goals. One piece of advice I got very early when I started at Read Charlotte in 2015 was to really focus on how do I teach and help my board members learn. And my goal for every time we have a board meeting is that there's something they've learned and that they can take away and use in their work or tell someone else. So obviously you always have to do kind of the perfunctory kind of operations part of your work. So, budgets and things like that. But I'm always trying to think about how do I leave them a little bit smarter and a little bit more empowered, but also on the other side, what can I learn from them so I'm a little more smarter and a little more empowered in my work as well.
Yeah, that's textbook. Way to go. That's good stuff. So give us some stats. Why should we all be advocates for literacy in our communities? Talk about the literacy challenges out there.
Well, one of the great things about early literacy is that unlike other issues, let's say post-secondary, college going, people don't debate about whether all children should learn to read. And it's a great issue because regardless of whether you were successful as a young child in reading or you struggled, everyone has a story, and it's a personal story, whether it's their own or someone they know or a loved one in their life. As it turns out, third grade is it's several things. One, it's the dividing line between learning to read and reading to learn. About 85% of the curriculum in grades 4 to 12 is reading based. Reading by third grade is one of the greatest predictors of how successful children will be in school. And it's also a harbinger of other later social outcomes. So a child who's not reading well by the end of third grade is 4 times more likely to drop out of high school. Conversely, if you take a child living in a low-income family in a high poverty area, you literally can increase the odds of them being successful and graduating high school by simply focusing on making sure that they're able to read well by the end of third grade. I'm starting to look at the relationship between third grade reading and other later social outcomes. We're starting a research project with a team at UNC Chapel Hill. We found a data set that's going to allow us to look at longitudinally what are those relationships between later social outcomes. But I'll point out one outcome in particular that I found in a paper from Philadelphia earlier this year. They looked at 7th grade girls and they looked at their literacy rates. And what they found was a 7th grade girl who was below grade level in reading was 2.5 times more likely to become a teenage mom. And that those odds just decreased as you improve their literacy, and that the impact was actually greater for Hispanic and Black girls as well. So it's a great example of what someone is called a keystone outcome. When we move the needle on third grade for a child, you are also moving the needle on later outcomes. And so that means kids not showing up in the juvenile justice system. That means kids not are on public assistance. That means kids who are not, have improved health outcomes, not using, illegal substances. I mean, it's just all the things we care about and often work on downstream. We can address those upstream by focusing and making sure that kids can learn to read. And the good news is we know a lot about how kids learn to read, and we know a fair amount about how we help kids learn to read. It's really an adult issue because kids don't teach themselves to learn to read. It's the adults in their lives. And teachers play a big role. The school system plays a big role, but so do all the other adults in a child's life as well. So when they're coming into your program at the Y, or whether, if they're with a big brother or big sister, if they're at church, aunt and uncle, neighbors, all of those adults in a child's life has the opportunity to have a positive influence on them. It's up to us collectively as a community to wrap our arms around our children and give them a fair chance to be successful with reading and in life.
Man, that's so good. So the last 18 months in the pandemic, how has it affected this issue?
Well, we know that the pandemic has had, significant effect on children and families. And, unfortunately, so the loss of life and the negative impact on families, particularly families that were fragile before the pandemic. And so, the impact of the pandemic has been uneven, right? There's some families that sailed through it, apart from the, health challenges, but like economically sailed through it. They were more equipped, to support remote learning at home and all of that. And then others that, struggled. In fact, there are people that are worried about it, what's called a K-shaped recovery in the economy. So some people, have a little bit of dip and then they go up, and then others fall down and continue to decline and never catch up. Well, we're, concerned about the same sort of K-shape for education and particularly early literacy. One thing I'll particularly point out. So if we think about early literacy, that the years between kindergarten through second grade, kindergarten, first and second grade, are really those core years for secure mastery of what are considered foundational early literacy skills. So everything through learning your phonics, being able to do, get the words off the page, reading fluency, those are really critical skills. And in the middle of second grade, you're supposed to make that shift, starting to make the shift between learning to read and reading to learn if you're on track, right? And so then you're taking your reading skills, your fluency, you're reading faster, you're acquiring more vocabulary, you're building your comprehension skills, and then we test all that at the end of third grade on the third grade reading EOG. Kindergarten through second grade got disrupted for the incoming first through third graders that are starting our schools this fall, right? And if you go back and actually have a chart, they did not get the normal K through 2. And the incoming third graders, okay, had the last quarter of first grade disrupted, all of second grade disrupted, not normal instruction, and now they're coming into third grade. And so we have the least amount of time to help our third graders, because remember all the stats I told you about the importance of third grade, and then second grade and first grade are also disrupted. Kindergarten had some, obviously pre-K, preschool experiences disrupted, but we have 4 years to help those kids get back on track. But for our first through third graders, it's absolutely critical, because they don't get to do, they don't get to be 8 again, right? And all of the impacts of the pandemic in terms of, their own self-esteem, their own sense of themselves as a learner, all of those things start to have negative effects on kids who are not able to read well. I've heard stories when I first got to Charlotte 6 years ago, 5th grade teachers telling me about children who cannot read 2 paragraphs of text without getting exhausted. If we don't act and act boldly, we're going to see a surge of children, right, in that position over the next 5 years. And we're going to see juvenile justice, the kids, in the juvenile justice system increase. We're going to see teenage pregnancy increase, substance abuse increase. We're going to see post-secondary attainment, whatever that is, right? Whether it's a 2-year certification, 4-year, that's going to go down. And the impact of this is going to be with us for a long time. So what we do over the next 24, 36 months is going to be absolutely critical to what the future of our communities look like in terms of the opportunities that our children have and what the opportunities their children will have, in 15 years' time.
And that's the passionate message we have to share in our own communities with our donors, leaders, and advocates, that, man, we've got to act now. We can't look back 5 years from now and just go, oops.
No, we can't. I mean, we're going to be judged by what we did and what we didn't do. And so the time for action is now. I've seen some, really good research that suggests, delay in getting kids the help they need really does have an impact on them. And so we don't know yet where all the kids are, but we can, in terms of their reading levels and their, learning loss, but we can expect to have a wider range of needs than we've ever had. And it's going to be up to us in our respective communities to be prepared to accept kids as they are and respond to their individual needs.
That's good. So you've been at this in the Charlotte area 5-6 years now. Tell us about some of the successes. And I'm excited because, again, y'all are helping us as we implement our own literacy initiative, trying to copy a lot of what y'all are doing. But tell us some of the successes y'all have had.
Well, when I first got here in 2015, it was pretty clear from my board and some community members we were working with that they wanted us to start on 0 to 5 first. And so we did a lot of work there. And one particular success that I'm very proud of is a partnership we had with Reach Out and Read Carolinas. Reach Out and Read is a program where doctors are literally prescribing books and language to children in well child visits. I love this program. It's got great bones. There are 15 well child visits. 13 of them happen in the first 36 months. And despite not necessarily taking care of our own health, adults are very inclined to take care of their children's health and to take them to their doctor and listen to what their doctors would tell them for their children. In Mecklenburg County, when I got here in 2016, only 29% of low-income children ages birth to 5 were in clinics where doctors were using Reach Out and Read. And the way it works is when a clinic adopts it, every child who comes in, they get the books with the doctor's prescribing. They're talking about language and early literacy. We grew that over 3 years, co-wrote a business plan with Reach Out and Read Carolinas. We grew that from 29% we started partnering in 2017 to 70% in 2020. And now have a new business plan to grow that to 75%. We won't see the impact of that for years because so much of the work is front loaded in the first 36 months, but those are the critical years for children's early brain development, early language development.
Oh, yeah.
Why does that matter? because when kids start to learn to read, they're actually catching up if they're on track with their language. You're learning to sound out words that you already know. And then it's really when you get to around middle, second grade or third grade that you start to be able to sound out words that you don't know. And that's why those early skills all sort of build together. And that's where you start to shift from learning to read to reading to learn. If you come in with language deficits, it's so much harder when all the words you're learning to read are foreign to you, right? And so that early investment was important, and it's a great example of a systems win, right? Like a change that we were able to make with a partner in our system that will improve the opportunity landscape, particularly for low-income children in our community. So we're really proud of that. There's some others I could name, but these days we're really focused on implementing, really, I would say, the best evidence-based solution we've seen for helping children with reading. And it's research that I have been tracking since August of 2017, so that's 4 years, have kicked the tires on it pretty hard, has more evidence behind it, both research-based, experimental, and real world than anything else I've seen, and has some really critical insights around how do we effectively teach children to read. The researcher behind it was named Carol Connor, and I got to meet her in January of last year when we could still travel. I will say, when I was flying out to California, I was thinking about this thing that was happening in China. And I was like, I wonder if any of this has made it to the US yet. And I'm glad I got to meet Dr. Connor. Regrettably, she passed away in spring of last year, too young, from ovarian cancer, but left behind an amazing body of work that is not known well enough yet. But what she's figured out is really, I would say, it's kind of the hidden mechanism behind whether we successfully teach children to read or not. So looking at Cleveland County schools in 2019, you had about 44% of third graders that were reading proficiently. And, when I look at the gap, the achievement gap is there in Cleveland County, not as big or as wide as Mecklenburg County, but you had about 31% of Black third graders reading at college and career ready, 52% of white third graders. That is not the ceiling, right? I thoroughly know, I not even believe, know that you can get 80% or more of your third graders reading at college and career ready, leveraging what Dr. Connor figured out around the relationship between children's reading skills and the types of reading instruction or supports they receive. Prior to the pandemic, the only way that we could have leveraged what Dr. Connor has figured out is to get it through the school system. Since the pandemic, we've worked really hard with the company that Dr. Connor co-founded called Learning Ovations to develop versions of a platform that she developed for teachers. I think of it as like a GPS to help the adults in a child's life know how to navigate them to third grade proficiency. We now have this for families and out of school programs. So our team at Read Charlotte has been working since spring of last year on how do we adapt this and help groups adopt it, adapt it, and improve so that we can take the same insights that have been proven to work in districts around the country to bring it to other adults and children's lives. So we're excited to partner with you all in Cleveland County and to learn and share with each other to help out of school time providers be able to use this platform, these insights to really identify where each child is at in their reading, can cover children from pre-K to third grade, and to know exactly what to do for that child. And to be able to provide really good information for how you think about that valuable time when you have a child after school, and how do you optimize the time that you have with that child to maximize their needs so that when they go back to school the next day, we've moved them a little bit closer, right, to where they need to be so that they can more successfully engage in the core classroom instruction that's happening. The other exciting opportunity is also how can we bring parents and families into this as well? And so how do we assist families? And I think it's a great example of how technology can help us do things that it's really hard to do on our own. The analogy I use with this is, when oftentimes when people think about technology in education, they think about disrupting, like getting rid of the teachers, whatever. That's not what this is. I think it's much closer to driver assist rather than driverless car. So it's going to help you stay on the road, stay safe, let you know if somebody's in your blind spot, who's behind you. I think it's the near use of technology to help us with insights that would be a lot harder for us to do. Let the tech do the work for you so that you can work smarter in the after school programs and provide kids the help they need in the way they need it when they need it. I'm excited for what it can do for us in Mecklenburg County. I'm really excited that you all will be using this in Shelby County. And I'm even more excited about what we can show the state of North Carolina that's possible when we put the right tools in the hands of adults and kids' lives.
Yeah, and that's great. Really proud of you. Just thankful you're such a powerful advocate for kids and families in our region and our state. I hope if you're watching this that you become an advocate. Make sure you share this with people in the educational world, the leaders in your communities, and let's advocate for kids and families around literacy, especially right now as we're going through these challenging times. Remember to subscribe to the channel, and always remember to lead with love. Thanks for watching. Thank you, Munro.